Flow state. What's your process of entering the flow state? How to get yourself in the headspace, and why does it work for you?
Got any tips for flow state?
What's your definition of flow state there, DJ?
My definition of flow state, it's that place where you lose yourself and you find yourself. When the complexity of the task you're doing at hand no longer seems complex, it becomes routine and almost automatic. To me, that is the entry level to the flow state. When I'm no longer thinking about what I'm doing and I'm completely immersed in the moment. But that could be CQB. But just telling Manny before you got in here, jumping was the easiest way for me to get into the flow state. When I finally got to the level where I could do whatever I wanted to do in the sky, whatever I wanted to do with the parachute, I could kind of just let myself go into it. And I could be a victim to gravity and apply subtle pressure and change my position. Now I'm in full control. Now I don't have to think about it anymore. I want to go there and I go there. I think about going here, I go there. I think about transition, I just transition. CQB is kind of the same way, but not in real world CQB. Like, it's very hard to get to a flow state because the consequences are so dire. But training for CQB, I feel like when we would do runs before, we'd jump out in the mountain town and just send it for 2 hours. Like, there's no communication, there's no shots, there's no real targets, there's just angles and distance, and you're just reacting off your buddy. I would consider a lot of those to be flow state because we never stopped. You got out of the truck, you stacked on the first door and sent it, and we cleared for hours, right? I mean, a lot of those I felt very much in the flow state. But a lot of that stuff is just where you let yourself go. You stop trying to script it, stop trying to think about the consequences, just let the action take over. But a lot of that I get through, like, the dry practice, like sitting there in isolation thinking about it. And thinking about CQB, little diagrams, and kind of just let myself. I must feel, God, what is that? It's a movie with Bradley Cooper, Hangover. You know, when Zach Galifianakis is going down, getting ready to play blackjack, and all the little shit's popping off in his head. Yeah. That's how it feels. But for me, it's like angles and distance, it's measurements, it's time through space, it's lighting conditions, like all these different things I'm trying to process. And when I don't have to think about them, when I'm just naturally doing them, like, I'll see shadows in my body, it'll gravitate toward the shadow. Now I'm in the shadow and I see the pan, I see my shadow forecast that I bleed off so it doesn't transfer. Like, all these different things, I'm naturally just doing them automatically. Like, that's the flow state. But that's a very hard thing to translate in the real world because now you have cross partners, right? Like, if you're doing an individual thing, it's so much easier to hit the flow state. But once you know how to get there, now when you apply it to the entire group dynamic, like, that's where the energy transfer comes from. It's like I'm trying to script everybody else on my narrative so we can all hit the flow state at the same time. If Joey's doing dynamic CQB and we're all doing deliberate, like, I've got to get him on my page right fucking now. How can I do it? I can reset him as a squeeze with an ocular cue, with a vocal cue. Hey, nice and easy. Try to slow him down as many times as possible. Now we're on the same page. Now the barrel waves are timed. Angles and distance start to appear. I'm not outrunning my headlights. Neither are you. Like, we're meeting each other at 50-50. But we've got to be on the same page. But for me, the flow state's a really cool thing. If you can try Nicole plunge. You can try that. We try to control your breathing and try to let your mind go blank. I try to think about static noises to where even if I have a song playing, at a certain point I'll come to and I can't hear anything. I'm not seeing anything. I'm kind of looking ahead, but I'm in my subconscious. And it feels not psychedelic, but weird, right? Like, almost like,
yeah.
You ever done breath work where all of a sudden you're in it and you're like, what the fuck? It feels like you're in, like, a coffin. That's what I feel like sometimes in here. I'll do a little bit of breath work and all of a sudden I'll zen out and I'll like come to and I'm like, how fucking long have I been in here? Like, you lose track of time. To me, that's flow state. But it's a practice thing. What do you do?
Man, so I think about Bruce Lee and his quote, flow like water. And so entering and kind of being in there, it feels like everybody's moving as one, no matter how different or distant you are in a CQB environment, especially in CQB. Like you mentioned, every time we'd go hit that training complex, we'd literally load up, jump out with sometimes finger guns, sometimes with just our rifles, and we'd start at one end of that town, and we'd flow from one building inside, outside a back door, inside another door, and we'd literally, if I was 1,000-foot view looking down, it felt like we were a singular water movement, just moving through each of those structures. Doing that thing some of the ruts with the big building structures where it's just you start hitting room after room, structure after structure, and you're processing it, but you're processing it at such a speed subconsciously that it doesn't seem like you have very much effort.
Yeah.
Like your conscience is turned off, and you're basically fell to the level of training, but your level of training so high that it just becomes second nature. You know, even like going from dynamic to deliberate back to dynamic, depending on, you know, throwing in shooters and stuff, like definitely that having that natural state of throttle control without you having to manage it, pretty much. That throttle is basically like an auto tune. Like you get those speakers where you can, hey, I'm gonna hit to level 4, and you see that knob turn by itself. Turn by itself. That's my flow state. Like I feel like my knob is just adjusting on its own to stimulus and experience, and it's like in sync with a bunch of the guys and whatnot. How I prepare for it, man, I guess no, I personally have never really had to go sit there and think about it. It was always more like a switch to me as far as the flow state, and it depend on the situation, the dudes I was around, and a lot of that preparation was all the thousands of reps that we did before. Like,
did you try to compartmentalize? Like, so you didn't have anything else competing with your thoughts? Or do you find it hard to hit the flow state if there's, you know, you're in an active text conversation, like people are fucking with you, whatever else? Like, is it easy for you to drop into, or do you got to be in a...
Well, I guess it depends on the discipline that you're practicing. Like for CQB, like I remember fighting with my old lady at the time, and we'd go do hit SATEC, and that would all just disappear. It's literally, like you said, it's where all that stuff disappears, and you're so in the moment that it almost doesn't feel real. It's like that state between right when you fall asleep, but you hadn't really engaged in your dream. So everything's kind of almost like your body's getting real tingly, you're getting real light on your feet, and you're literally just analyzing and processing and just executing stuff that's coming at you. Almost like, you know, the scene from Star Wars before they go into hyperdrive where everything starts getting real fast at you, but
yeah, slow at the same time.
It's not getting smaller, it's getting bigger. So you're seeing more of the picture. I feel like I can see like eyes in the back of my head, I guess is the best way to put it. But like I'm analyzing and processing more of my peripheral. Like there's certain points where, depending on your bandwidth, what you got going on, even though you can see out to here, you're only processing this much. But once all that, the noise goes away, and usually that's what flow state is, all the other noise goes away except for the moment you got on, my peripherals seem to be like way wider. Like I'm processing what, you know, the number 2 guy, number 3 guy, number 4 guys doing in the room, even with like a barely glance in their direction. Like I'm focused on what I got in front of me, and I can catch a glimpse of the number 3 guy to the corner of my eye, but I know exactly what he's going to do. I know exactly what movie he's going to be, and it just sinks and flows. Flow state's pretty intense.
Yeah, dude. If you guys haven't read The Rise of Superman, read that book. And Talent Code, Little Book of Talent, they all talk about flow state. The Rise of Superman's very interesting. Talk about all the subcultures, you know, skateboarders in Southern California, big wave surfers, like where they come from, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, soccer, like all like these little pockets where these fucking phenoms come from. And they all talk about their process of getting to the flow state. Super interesting. Yeah, really cool. Yeah, flow state's fascinating stuff.